You come home after a day that bled into evening, the weight of deadlines and deliverables still humming in your veins. The house is quiet, but not with peace. It is a silence filled with the unspoken, the missed bedtime stories, the hurried meals, the conversations reduced to logistics and schedules. Your family is there, under the same roof, yet you feel like a stranger in your own life. This is the modern disconnect, the illusion that by providing materially, you are building a home, while the very foundation of connection quietly erodes. Society has sold you a narrative. Success is measured in promotions, accolades, and the ability to provide a certain lifestyle. You tell yourself, I am doing this for them. The late nights, the business trips, the constant checking of emails during family time, all are justified by the belief that this sacrifice is necessary for their well-being. But this is a subtle deception. The Confucianist principle of Xiao, often translated as filial piety, teaches that the root of virtue lies in nurturing relationships, not in accumulating resources. When you prioritize work over presence, you are not building a future. You are borrowing from the emotional capital of your relationships, and the interest rate is steep. The cost is not just missed moments, it is the gradual fading of intimacy, the loss of shared memories that never were, and the slow transformation of family into a group of coexisting individuals rather than a cohesive unit. Consider the economy of your attention. Every hour invested in climbing the corporate ladder is an hour divested from listening to your child's dreams, from supporting your partner's struggles, from learning the stories of your parents. This is not a judgment. It is an observation of human behavior. Psychologically, we are wired for connection. The neurobiology of attachment shows that secure bonds reduce stress, increase resilience, and provide a sense of meaning. When you chronically underinvest in these bonds, you create an emotional deficit. You may achieve professional milestones, but the victory feels hollow. The emptiness that follows is not a sign of ingratitude. It is the logical consequence of a life out of balance. The very success you chase becomes a monument to your isolation, and the family you sought to provide for becomes a mirror reflecting your absence. Inside you, a dialogue plays on loop. One voice, driven by societal expectations and personal ambition, urges you to push harder, to secure more, to never stop climbing. The other voice, quieter but persistent, whispers of bedtime stories left untold, of family dinners eaten in silence, of the growing distance between you and those who matter most. This is the ethical conflict at the heart of the modern family. The tension between the drive for external achievement and the longing for internal harmony. You rationalize, I'll make it up to them later, or they understand this is for their future. But these are defense mechanisms, ways to numb the cognitive dissonance between your actions and your deeper values. The conflict is silent because it happens in the chambers of your conscience, but its effects are loud in the strained conversations and the unspoken resentments that seep into your home. This chapter is not meant to condemn your efforts, but to illuminate the true cost of the disconnect. The fatigue you feel is not just from work. It is from the internal division, the sense that you are living a split life. The way forward begins by acknowledging this cost, not with guilt, but with clarity. For it is only when we see the depth of the disconnect that we can begin the journey back to the root. The silence you now notice in your home is not an emptiness to be filled with more noise. It is a space, an invitation to listen to a deeper rhythm of life that you have been too busy to hear. This is where the real work begins. Not in doing more, but in understanding differently. The ancient concept of Xiao it's not as a dusty commandment from the past, but as a startlingly practical revelation for your modern life. Forget what you might imagine about blind obedience or rigid hierarchy. Xiao is something far more profound and human. It is the inherent grammar of relationship, the recognition that you did not spring from nowhere. You are a branch connected to a trunk, which is itself connected to roots that reach deep into the past. This is not a poetic metaphor, but a psychological reality. Your identity, your resilience, your very sense of place in the world is inextricably linked to these bonds. Xiao is the practice of tending to these connections with conscious gratitude and reciprocity. It is the understanding that honoring your parents is not about submitting to their authority, but about acknowledging the debt of life itself, a debt you did not incur by choice, but one that forms the very basis of your existence and, in turn, will form the basis for the future. It is the wisdom that to care for the root is to ensure the health of the entire tree. The family is the first and most fundamental school of character. It is here, in the unscripted, often frustrating interactions with parents, siblings, and children, that you learn the raw materials of all virtue. The patience you musters to listen to an aging parent tell the same story for the third time is the identical muscle required to lead a struggling employee with compassion. The fairness you practice in resolving a dispute between your children is the same ethical discernment needed to navigate a complex business negotiation. The commitment you show by putting your family's needs before your fleeting desires is the foundation of all integrity. Confucius taught that the family is the laboratory where we learn to be human. When you neglect this laboratory, you may acquire skills, but you fail to build character. The successful individual, who is a stranger at home, is like a beautifully furnished house built on sand. The first real storm will reveal the instability. The shift happens not in a lightning bolt, but in a quiet moment of clarity. It is the realization that the time spent reading a bedtime story is not time taken from your career, but time invested in the very reason you have a career. It is the understanding that the sacrifice of a Saturday afternoon to visit your parents is not a loss of productivity, but a gain in perspective and emotional grounding. This is the moment when the weight of obligation transforms into the power of purpose. You see that by rooting yourself in your family, you are not being pulled away from your ambitions. You are building an unshakable foundation from which your ambitions can rise with greater meaning and stability. The conflict between work and family begins to dissolve, not because the demands disappear, but because your perspective shifts. You are no longer a torn individual, but an integrated person whose professional life is an expression of their personal values, not a betrayal of them. This revelation is the turning point. It is the understanding that the love and duty within your family are not constraints on your freedom, but the very conditions that make true freedom. Freedom from alienation, from existential anxiety, from the relentless hunger for external validation possible. The root does not imprison the tree. It allows it to reach for the sky. Understanding the importance of the root is one thing. Watering it daily is another. This is where wisdom becomes action, and where the abstract concept of Xiao is forged in the simple, repeated rituals of your everyday life. The journey back to connection is not built on grand gestures, but on the architecture of small, intentional acts that, over time, rebuild the trust and intimacy that haste has eroded. A ritual is not an empty routine. It is an action infused with meaning, a deliberate pause in the noise of the world to affirm what truly matters. You do not need more time. You need more intention. Begin by instituting micro-rituals, small, non-negotiable pockets of focused presence. Perhaps it is the commitment to one meal a week, maybe breakfast on Sunday, where no electronic devices are allowed. The table becomes a sanctuary, not a pit stop. The conversation may be awkward at first, the silence palpable, but you are not seeking entertainment. You are rebuilding a habit of being together. Another ritual could be a 15-minute check-in with your partner or child when you first come home, not to discuss logistics, but to ask, what was a moment of joy or struggle for you today? And then listen, fully. The ritual is in the asking and the listening, a daily ceremony of respect that says, "Your inner world matters to me." Xiao manifests as respect, but respect is not a feeling, it is a behavior. It is the decision to put down your phone and make eye contact when your father is telling a story you've heard before. It is the effort to remember and acknowledge a family member's personal struggle or achievement. It is the humility to apologize sincerely when you have been short-tempered, modeling the virtue that you wish to see. This active respect also extends to creating boundaries that protect the family sphere. It means having the courage to tell your workplace, "I am not available after 6 p.m. for non-urgent matters," and then honoring that boundary yourself. By doing so, you are not neglecting your career. You are defining your priorities through your actions. You are demonstrating that your family is not a leftover from your professional life, but the central pillar that makes your work meaningful. The ultimate integration is not the perfection of family life, but the reframing of your entire identity. You begin to see that your most important work is not the project you deliver at the office, but the legacy of character you build at home. The patience, loyalty, and care you cultivate within your family become the moral compass for every other decision you make. The harmony you seek in the world does not start with changing governments or corporations. It starts with the quality of conversation at your dinner table. When you prioritize the root, you stop living as a fragmented individual juggling roles and start living as an integrated human being whose actions in the world are a natural extension of the values practiced at home. We began in the silence of disconnection, the unsettling quiet of a house that is not yet a home. We navigated the conflict between the world's definition of success and the soul's need for belonging. And we arrived at the revelation that the ancient virtue of Xiao was not a chain, but the very root system that allows us to stand tall and weather any storm. The message is universal, a mirror for every viewer. A society's strength is not measured by its gross domestic product, but by the gross domestic peace of its households. Before you set out to save the world, learn to care for those within your own walls. For it is in this ordinary, often overlooked soil that the most extraordinary transformation occurs, the slow, quiet, and relentless work of building a life not just of success, but of significance. Your heritage is not what you leave for your family, but what you have built with them, and that construction project is always only happening today.